Welcome into the Hear Me, See Me podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Bruner. Hear Me, See Me is a mental health awareness initiative of WIBW television as we seek to raise awareness, find solutions, and offer help and support. You can find a lot of those resources on WIBW.com/HearMeSeeMe. We are embarking on year 2 of this initiative because there is so much to talk about, so much to let people know that they are not alone. That includes in the workplace. You know, if you think about it, we probably spend more waking hours at work and surrounded by our coworkers than we do at home with our family. I mean, we sleep at home, but of course, when we're awake, we're at work. So we want to take a look at what you can do to make sure that your mental health is being supported in the workplace and how one company in particular is doing that. Cody Foster is a co-founder of Advisors Excel based in Topeka, Kansas. Welcome to you.
Yeah,
Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, New Year.
Do you have any New Year's resolutions?
No, not really. I'm not a big New Year's resolution. So
because you're setting goals all the time.
Pretty much, yeah. It's just I always say, like, if it's not important enough to do now, like, don't need a resolution around it, I guess. So
I wanted to visit with you because I read an interview that you had done regarding work at home in light of the pandemic, because the pandemic happened and a lot of people were forced. And I imagine, how in your company were people forced to kind of start working from home?
Yeah, so we started that. I think, like everyone, you didn't know what was going on, so we sent everyone home. Probably 3 or 4 months. I don't know. It's been a while ago now, and made all those adjustments that we had to make to be able to work from home. You know, I don't think a lot of us were completely prepared for that. But I think as that went on, we made the decision we were going to bring people back to work.
And you made that a very intentional decision, because there's been a lot of discussion since then. A lot of people saying, well, gosh, I prefer working from home. I want to stay working from home. And their productivity doesn't suffer if they're working from home. And we can debate that side of the equation all we want. But you had a very intentional reason for believing that work from home isn't what's best for us as human beings.
So I would say a couple things. I would say by every way that we could measure productivity at work, we were not more productive at home, right? I know people said that, but even when I work from home, like, I would go do laundry. I probably had more incentive than anyone to be productive when I'm at home and would still get distracted with it. But I do think the big thing that we talked a lot about is just this idea of building community and the culture that we're trying to build. And I do think, probably more specific to what you're talking about, is I think work is one of the last places that people have relationship and connection, like real human connection. And I'm a little nervous about what, like, this work from home trend, and you're starting to see it change a little, I guess, in the last year or so. I think some other people are starting to realize that you miss so much of that human connection that I think is really, really important. It's one of the last places that we have that, and so to lose that, I think we made the decision we didn't want to lose that, I guess, is the easiest way to say it.
What do you see happen when people are around each other face to face? And maybe what do you even notice in yourself? You know, those weeks when you're maybe on the road and alone and isolated and doing your meetings remotely or via phone versus when you're in the office and you can physically see someone and talk to them.
We're recording this on a week where we did work from home Monday and Tuesday.
We just had 14 inches of snow in Topeka, Kansas, and everything shut down, and the streets are horrible, and every highway in northeast Kansas was closed Sunday into Monday.
Schools still shut down. It was funny because we worked from home Monday and Tuesday, or we couldn't really get our parking lots cleared in time. But even people, like, Tuesday when they're back in the office, are like, man, I hated that, right? So it's like you're on Zooms all day long. It's just, you don't have the same connection. It's harder to read body language. There's so many things. And then I think the other thing, it's just those, and some people may not value them, but I think it's those, like, casual conversations that happen in between the meetings, that happen at the coffee pot, that at times people say isn't productive. But I think from a human connection and just people side of things, it is really, really important. So we didn't want to lose that, and so we made that call really early. We lost some people who went to work for places that were going to allow them to work from home, but I would say now, like, making that decision quick and early, it's like we've just been pretty outspoken of, this is what we want. It may not be what you want, but if this is what you want, I think it's worked out well now. We're not fighting with people saying they still want to work from home or trying to bring people back in. I have some other CEO buddies in town who, as they've tried to bring people back in to work now, 2, 3, 4 years later, they're having a heck of a time getting them to come back to work. So
it's funny that you mentioned the snowstorm, because I live on a fairly busy road, and I even noticed that by Monday night, and the roads really weren't that great by Monday night, especially as the sun went down and things refroze. But all of a sudden, this traffic started, and we're like, why are people here this time of night? I think they just said, I got to get out of the house.
Yes.
I'm done. I was home. I was locked down. I've been through all that. I need to get out and about. And you're right. It's not even so much about the collaboration in the workplace. It's feeling that there's somebody there that supports you, whether that's just a smile from someone as you're walking through the hallway, someone that acknowledges, oh, yes, you are a physical presence, and you are a human being, and you're alive, and people see you.
It's this week, and I won't mention, but we had an employee who got a really bad cancer diagnosis Tuesday, and I was in the office and went over and talked to a couple of people on her team. We ended up sitting there talking for 10 or 15 minutes about it, and just that's something you wouldn't have done if you're working from home, right? And just, I think having that human connection there and being able to just go talk to other people about, what really is it's going to be a life-altering, thing for her. It was just, I wouldn't have had that if we were working from home, right? There's those human connection things that I think are important. So.
Have you always had this attitude, or because Advisors Excel does have a very robust discussion and focus on mental health for your employees in your workplace? Let's go back. What started that?
We had one of our key team members take his life for... actually, it'll be 5 years in March, I guess. I don't know. I may be doing the math wrong. Maybe 4 years in March. It's probably 4 years in March, actually. So I would say we've always valued community and connection and trying to have a fun culture and people enjoying coming to work. And in that, we've probably focused more on the mental health side of it since then, right? And I think and I'll just say, I think there's a lot of other people. I've never struggled with it. So to this day, I've never really had any mental health battles. No one in my family's really had any, knock on wood, so I was probably a bit naive to how many people did struggle. But when you have someone who, Josh, and I think you've had Damon on here too, Josh was like a rock star at AE, like one of our biggest contributors, like one of the people everyone turned to get stuff done, and also that person that was like the connector with anyone. So then when you see someone who struggles with it, that like you wouldn't think is the person who struggles with it, right? Doesn't fit really any of the stereotypes of what you would, I guess what I probably naively would have thought of before, people that struggled with it. I think that was kind of a wake-up call to us, and I think you and I have even talked about this. Prior to that, had you asked me how many of our employees battled some sort of mental health thing, I would have told you 5%, maybe 10%. After that, we got pretty open and public, and just there was a lot of communication and conversation at the office. I would guess it's closer to 35 or 40%, some that it's minor, but some that it's major, right? And clinical stuff too. So I think that was just an eye-opening thing of like, man, if we have, let's say, a third of our workforce that's struggling with mental health and we're not doing anything to try and improve that, you could tie it back to, I think we would tie it to just trying to be good humans and support the people that support our business so much. But like, even from a productivity standpoint, man, if you've got that many of your people that are battling it in some way, shape, or form, if you can do something to help them, right, it's going to be good for business. Ideally, I think it would be good for the people first and foremost, but the other factor of that is it does end up being good for us too.
And if you can't convince a fellow CEO as a human being to do something about it, then speak to their bottom line.
Correct.
Then speak to their bottom line. And you talk about this fun culture, and that's why they say, in retrospect, is there anything that maybe could have been a red flag, or is it what they say that you also need to check on your well friends, check on your happy friends?
Yeah, I think so. I'll say, like, with Josh specifically, I knew he was battling some of that, right? And we had got him some good help, too. And I think that's the misconception around it, too, is like, you go talk to someone, you're going to be fine. And that's not always the case. Right now, I would strongly encourage that, to get professional help as much as possible, too. But so it wasn't unaware to us that he was battling some of these things. I think what I know now, there were probably some red flags I would have saw of leading up to him taking his life that I know a lot more about now, that I don't know that I would have known as much back then, when we were having some of those conversations with him, that I probably would have pushed a little bit harder to get him even more help. So I think that's one of the things that we've changed a lot. Like Vallejo has this great mental health first aid.
I was going to ask what you've done.
So yeah, Vallejo's got this awesome training. They'll come in and do for organizations. We brought them in, trained almost all of our leaders went through that. So it's a lot of just like what to look for, how to understand it, steps that you can take. Now we do a training every new hire. So every new hire class that comes through, we have, I don't know if it's an hour and a half, 2 hours that Leslie leads or kind of walks them through of just like, hey, here's things to be paying attention to in yourself, in your coworkers, if you're seeing it. A bunch of other stuff. We have 2 full-time therapists now on staff.
But a modified mental health first aid is part of your onboarding process.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So every new hire goes through that.
How important has that been, and what kind of changes maybe have you seen?
Yeah, I think it's been great. I don't know if we know exactly how to measure, like, is our mental health, overall mental health better, right? We've not had any terrible situations since, so I think that's good. But I would say there's an appreciation for it too, right? I mean, it's interesting to get notes or emails from new employees, right, who are new to AE and just saying like, man, I can't believe you guys, right, especially those who have maybe struggled or battled with it a little, to come someplace and see like, hey, we're talking about this in your first, week that you're at AE and spending some time on it. So, yeah, it's been good.
And then I cut you off when you started to mention the therapist. 2 therapists.
Yep.
You started with one.
We started with one, yeah, and Emily got full pretty quick. So we provide their services for free to not just employees, but their family members too. So I think between the combination of that, Emily got pretty busy pretty quickly, so we brought on a second one. And we do that in partnership. There's a lot of kind of licensing and things. We do that in partnership with CFCC. Corey Sleep's been a good friend for a long time. So they technically work for them. We just contract them full time to support our team. And that's been great too. I think that was one of the other things going through this situation with Josh. We had probably, I don't know, let's say 3, 4, 5 therapists, pastors kind of come into the office for a week just to be available if people wanted to talk to them. And it blew my mind. Like, one of them sat in the office beside Dave and I. How many people would come up and talk to them, like right beside our office? And we'd had this partnership with CFCC forever where people could go to their office and everyone would remind them of that. And they're like, yeah, we thought about going, but it's just kind of an inconvenience to go. So I think the big takeaway for us from that, which this is probably what surprised me, that people would be afraid to like go talk to a therapist in our office, is actually the easier we make it for people to go talk to someone, the more likely they are to do it. And so that's, it was coming out of that experience where like, we just need someone in the office full time where, if someone has a situation, they know they can just walk over there and talk to them. Now, they schedule a lot of that too, right? So they're scheduling stuff with them, but and I guess maybe, in a workplace, one of the big lessons for us is like, the easier you make the resources or the ability for people to get help, the more likely they are to do it. The harder it is for them to access it, the less likely they are to take advantage of it.
But this must be a bit of an investment for you. If you talk about therapists, the mental health first aid training, why is it a good investment? Give me that cost-benefit analysis.
I don't know if we have a direct cost-benefit analysis. I think anything we do for a team has some cost or investment to it, right? So I think it's just where do you want to spend those dollars? So I think we're always looking at what's the culture we're trying to build. How does it benefit the people that work there? We want people to love coming to work, right? And love working at Advisors Excel. So I think I've said this before, but we have cafes where we kind of subsidize lunch cost. We're pretty well known for taking a trip to Mexico if we hit our stretch goal for every team member. Those all have cost to them. So I think you're just trying to weigh, where you're investing money in, like fun things, I guess, is part of that. But then, I would say an investment in the health of your people, physical, mental, emotional, is probably a better place to invest in than even in the fun things. So I think we want to have fun, but we want really healthy team members showing up too. So it's, if you were going to do the cost benefit analysis, especially as I kind of shared, probably a third of our workforce is battling some sort of mental health challenge. proving that, and getting them a little more productive, I think you could make that argument that there's a pretty good return on investment there too. So
you implement all of this for your employees. What about for you as a leader? What have you learned about yourself?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I told you I don't struggle with it a lot, right? And at all, really, which is a good thing. I handle stress pretty well, which I think has allowed me to take on a lot of things and not worry about it. I have a general belief that it doesn't matter all that much, and we've joked before, like the work usually gets done and it all works out how it's supposed to. But I do think understanding that, probably one of the big things is like not everyone is wired just like me, right? And so being, I think, aware of that, supportive of that, trying to build some systems to help those that do, have some battles or struggle with that is a big part of that. I think just staying more plugged into people too, right? I hate to say, like, being a little more aware of the rooms I'm in and how people sense, right? And just making sure, checking in more. That would be the other big thing I think I try and do a lot more. Like, I mean, my cheat is I just have a folder in my inbox that says check on people, and anytime something comes up, I'll either pull an email over or send myself an email and just pull it in there, and, every other week kind of go into that folder and just see, like, hey man, who is someone that I need to check on, and just see how they're doing too. So I think just trying to be a little more aware and cognizant of it as a leader also. Because
that can be hard. When you have a high threshold for being able to get things done and achieve, it can be very easy to get frustrated and say, why can't people just get the work done? So how can you strike that balance though with people? Because people still do need to do their job, but also be sensitive to the fact that some people might need more resources or support.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that I'm great at it yet, so I should ask you how you do it. Obviously, you're probably the same way to get to where you're at.
Struggle.
I think it's one. We were talking about this before a little. Like, you still have to do the work, right? So I think that's one important thing. Is it's like, I don't want people confused that you can come there and you don't have to work because you don't feel like it or you're having some struggles. Like, you do have to get the work done, and so there's this balance between, we have a culture of productivity, like we get a lot of stuff done there, but just being, I guess, aware of when people are kind of going through that. I think the big thing for us has been making sure, we talked about all our leaders have gone through the mental health first aid, all the new hires go through a training around it, making sure as an organization you're at least aware of what are some of the red flags that you may see someone struggling, and then try and direct or have that conversation or bring some of those resources to the table for them. But I think, probably more than anything, just understanding I'm wired a certain way, not everyone is, and giving a little more grace around that.
You have outside interest as well, though, too. I mean, we started the conversation by saying that we spend more waking hours at work than we probably do awake with our families at home. But you have things that you do in the community. You have, the restaurant, entertainment type side of things that's going on in your life. You're involved with the chamber. You have things outside of the workplace for your employees as well. How important is having some of those outside interests to communicate and offer support? Your family, your kids have things going on.
Yeah, I think, some balance in your life is probably always a good thing. I'm probably a little, one thing I don't necessarily believe is that you try and do all things well, right? I think in every season of life, I'm in a season of life right now where my family and work are kind of my two big priorities, right? That won't always be the case. Our daughter's a year and a half away from graduating, then we'll be empty nesters, and that will change, kind of our season of life. And I remember Andy Stanley, I heard him say something one time, and he's like, sometimes the right answer is no for now, but not no forever, and just understanding the season of life you're in and balancing the most important things. So I only say that in the sense of, like, outside of family obligations and work obligations, I don't do a lot of other things. My wife and I are at home a lot. We don't say yes to a lot of social things because that's just not as important to me right now. But why I say that is, like, I do see people get in trouble. Two things. One, when you take on too much. So you say yes to too many things, have too many obligations. I have a friend, we talk about this a lot. So sometimes learning to say no. But then also, I think if you are saying yes to things that aren't the most important things, and it starts to impact. Like, I would not want to say yes to anything that would impact, my family relationship right now, in my family obligations right now. And I think sometimes if you do that, like, that's where you're going to get yourself in trouble too, right? When the most important things in your life aren't taken care of first and foremost because you're trying to do something else. I think that's probably a bad thing to do. So
you might not think of this as a mental health program or initiative that you do, but you do help your employees get outside of the workplace by, I believe you offer them paid time to go volunteer.
Yeah, they kind of lucked into this. Like, it was an idea at one of our like big days where twice a year we would shut the office down, just like, hey, beginning of the year, what are the goals? Halfway through the year, where are we at? And I think it was one of the summer ones we decided, like, let's go volunteer in the community in the afternoon. And people came back just buzzing from it, right? They were like, I mean, on like cloud nine. Like, it was such a fun activity to do that we're like, we had to do this more often, right? So I hadn't necessarily tied it into the mental health side, but I could see the benefit of that, right? I think no matter where you're at in life, like, serving others is always going to make you feel pretty good. And so once a quarter, team members go out and serve in the community, for, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours probably. Kind of depends on what they're doing with other team members at AE. So going back to what we talked about having that human connection, and, there's a lot of studies that show, like, if you have a good friend at work, how much your mental health improves by having, like, a really good friend at work. So, like, getting them out serving in the community with other team members, building relationship and connection is great. So it's kind of good for our culture. I like to think it's good for the community. We've volunteered a lot of man hours supporting a lot of great organizations here in Topeka, so that's been good. And it's helped us hiring. Like, I mean, it's been attractive to other people that want to serve, and more service-based business. So being able to find those people that kind of have a servant mindset or servant heart has been a big part of it too.
Final thoughts. What should every employee in any organization know?
Well, you all have done, I feel like, a phenomenal job with this whole campaign of making people understand that, like, one, I think they're not alone. That's one thing I've seen is, like, sometimes when people are struggling, instead of talking about it, they feel like they're the only one dealing with it, and they isolate themselves. And I have a good friend right now who was just doing, thankfully she got some help and she's doing good now, but, like, she just isolated herself more and more and more. And it's the worst thing you can do. The best thing you can do is talk to some people about it and get help. So I think first and foremost, above everything, I know you guys have done such a great job, but, like, seek out help, right? Whether that's a family member, a trusted friend, a professional. Like, don't sit there and suffer in silence thinking you're the only person that's dealing with this, because you're not. There's a lot of people that are going through stuff. So I think that's probably the most important thing, I would say. Second thing I think is important is maybe you're like me and you aren't struggling with mental health stuff. Educate yourself enough to understand or see, like, red flags in coworkers, right? And don't be afraid to check in and just ask how people are doing. And don't let them off the hook with the fine. Like, if you can sense something's wrong, like, don't be afraid to maybe dig a little deeper, ask the uncomfortable, question, and just really be there and kind of, like, care about the people that you work with. So, if you are battling something, please, like, reach out to somebody, right? I promise there's a lot of people that want to help you. And then if you're not battling, like, educate yourself enough to understand, and see red flags in other people that may be going through something.
And a lot of people can help you from there as well.
For sure.
Thank you so much. Cody Foster with Advisors Excel. We appreciate you, everything you do in the community. Remember, you can find a lot of resources on WIBW.com/hearmeseeme. If anything you've heard has you feeling like you perhaps might be in crisis or need someone to reach out to and listen to you, the 988 Suicide Prevention Lifeline is there 24/7 whenever anyone needs it. And as always, we want you to know that we do hear you, we see you.